Sometimes, the great outdoors becomes the backdrop for unimaginable tragedy. What begins as a quest for thrill can swiftly spiral into disaster, leaving behind stories of heartbreak and mystery. From fatal miscalculations to nature's unpredictable fury, these stories reveal the darker side of adventure, where the pursuit of the extraordinary comes at an unthinkable cost. These 5 haunting outdoor deaths will challenge your perception of the wild, forcing you to ask, how far is too far when chasing the adventure of a lifetime? On a shadowed summer night in 1967, Glacier National Park's vast, untamed wilderness revealed a darker side, one that still haunts its trails and towering peaks. 2 young women, just 19 years old, set out on separate adventures beneath Montana's starlit skies, unaware they were walking into a nightmare. Within hours of each other, Julie Helgeson and Michelle Coons would face the unrelenting power of nature, falling victim to the park's most fearsome predators, grizzly bears. The park's beauty had long been celebrated, its endless forests and jagged cliffs a haven for explorers. But something had changed. For weeks, grizzlies had been sighted closer and closer to campsites, drawn by scraps left behind by careless visitors and even hand-fed by thrill-seeking tourists. In those days, there were no bear-proof trash cans, no strict guidelines, and little understanding of how human interference could tip the scales of wilderness into chaos. Julie Helgeson's night began like any other, peaceful, serene. She and a friend pitched their camp in a quiet clearing, the kind of spot where the stars feel close enough to touch. But as they slept, a heavy presence stirred in the shadows. In the pre-dawn hours, a grizzly crept into their camp, sniffing at their sleeping bags. Frozen with fear, they hoped the bear might move on. It didn't. Without warning, the grizzly struck, ripping through fabric and flesh with terrifying precision. Julie's screams pierced the stillness as the bear dragged her into the darkness, her companion left bleeding and helpless. Hours later, a search party found the Julie clinging to life, her body bearing the brutal marks of the attack. Despite desperate efforts to save her, she died before the rescue helicopter could even leave the ground. Miles away, Michelle Coons and her group faced their own encounter with terror. Earlier in the evening, a grizzly had raided their campsite. Scavenging for food, thinking the danger had passed, they retreated to a beach for the night. But the wilderness is rarely so forgiving. At 4:30 a.m., the bear returned, this time with a chilling determination. As it charged, panic erupted. Michelle's friends managed to climb nearby trees, but she wasn't fast enough. The bear attacked her with a ferocity that defied imagination, severing her arm and inflicting fatal wounds. By the time help arrived, Michelle was gone. The horror of that night was unlike anything the park had ever seen. 2 women, 2 attacks, just hours apart. The coincidence was chilling, the violence unprecedented. News of the tragedy spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the nation and forcing Glacier National Park to confront the grim consequences of human carelessness. The events were later chronicled in Jack Olson's Night of the Grizzlies, a haunting account that exposed the perilous relationship between humans and wildlife. In the aftermath, the park adopted sweeping changes. Bear-proof trash cans became mandatory. Feeding wildlife was strictly prohibited, and areas with known bear activity were closed off. But for those who remember, the scars of that night remain deeper than policy shifts. Even now, Glacier's breathtaking beauty carries an air of foreboding. The jagged peaks and dense forests seem to whisper warnings to those who tread its trails. Visitors speak of an unsettling quiet in the places where the attacks occurred, as if the land itself remembers. For some, it's a chilling reminder that in the wild, there are no guarantees. Beneath the surface of serenity lies a force untamed. And for Julie Helgeson and Michelle Coons, the cost of that truth was their lives. The climb up Everest is a journey that begins in the relative calm of base camp at 17,700 feet, 5,400 meters. But as climbers ascend toward the summit, the mountain reveals its unrelenting, perilous nature. Each camp along the way marks a deeper descent into the unknown. Beyond these camps lies the final trial, the death zone, a desolate 3,000-foot stretch where life begins to slip away, step by agonizing step. The name Death Zone is no exaggeration. Here, climbers face the full fury of Everest, oxygen deprivation, plummeting temperatures, and unpredictable storms that can turn the summit's siren call into a death knell. In early May 1996, a group from Adventure Consultants, a company specializing in guiding climbers to the top, embarked on a climb that would forever be etched in Everest's grim history. The group included 11 clients, 3 company guides, and an unknown number of Sherpas. Among them was Yasuko Namba, a determined 47-year-old woman set on becoming the oldest Japanese climber to reach Everest's summit, and the second Japanese woman to conquer all 7 summits, the highest peaks on each continent. As they scaled the Lhotse Wall on May 8th, one of the guides, Andy Harris, suffered a near-catastrophic injury. A boulder the size of a television struck him in the chest. Yet, Harris pressed on, refusing to abandon the climb. The group reached Camp 4, and just after midnight on May 10th, began their final push to the summit. Time was against them. For safety, climbers must begin their descent by 2 p.m. to avoid nightfall in the death zone. Yet, delays and exhaustion slowed their progress. It wasn't until well after 2 p.m. that many in the group reached the summit, a breathtaking but dangerous delay. As they began their descent, Everest unleashed its fury. At 5 p.m., a blizzard descended upon the mountain, engulfing the climbers in blinding snow and gale-force winds. Visibility vanished, temperatures plummeted, and the group became trapped in the death zone. Rob Hall, a seasoned guide and co-founder of Adventure Consultants, stayed behind with the struggling Yasuko Namba, even as conditions worsened. Using a satellite phone, Hall managed to contact his wife the next afternoon, his voice faint and freezing. "Sleep well, my sweetheart. Please don't worry too much." It would be his last message. By the time rescuers arrived, Hall, Namba, and Harris were dead, claimed by the unforgiving storm. Hall's body was found frozen, a tragic testament to his devotion to his clients, while Harris's body was never recovered. The storm didn't spare others on the mountain that day. 4 climbers from another group also perished, their dreams of conquering the world's highest peak ending in icy desolation. The 1996 blizzard remains one of Everest's deadliest tragedies, a haunting reminder that even the most experienced climbers are at the mercy of the mountain. Everest is more than a challenge. It is a reckoning, a place where ambition meets nature's unyielding power, and the line between triumph and tragedy is drawn thin as air. Deep underwater exploration has always been a dance with the unknown, where the boundaries of human ingenuity meet the unrelenting forces of nature. In 1973, the Johnson Sea Link, a state-of-the-art research submersible, descended into the depths off the coast of Key West, Florida. What began as a routine dive quickly spiraled into a nightmare, one that would claim 2 lives and leave an enduring shadow over deep-sea exploration. The story began a year earlier when the USS Fred T. Barry, a decommissioned destroyer, was deliberately sunk to create an artificial reef. By 1973, the site had transformed into a thriving underwater ecosystem, attracting the attention of scientists eager to study its development. The Johnson Sea Link, designed for cutting-edge research, was dispatched to investigate. This remarkable submersible featured a unique lockout diving system that allowed scuba divers to leave and return to its aluminum aft compartment, while keeping the pilot's compartment dry and pressurized. On this dive, seasoned diver Albert Stover and Edwin Link, son of the submersible's creator, occupied the uninsulated aluminum section, dressed casually in shorts and shirts. They expected a brief mission lasting no more than an hour. As the submersible descended toward the wreck of the Fred T. Barry, the tranquil waters of Key West seemed to promise another successful dive. But deep below the surface, unseen dangers lurked. The sub became entangled in the cables and debris of the sunken ship, trapped in a web of steel and shadows. Every effort to free the Johnson Sea Link only seemed to tighten its grip. the wreck refusing to relinquish its hold. Time ticked by, and the situation grew more dire. The temperature inside the uninsulated aft compartment began to plummet, the icy waters outside pressing in with an unyielding chill. The chemical scrubbers meant to remove carbon dioxide from the air struggled to function in the freezing conditions. Inside the compartment, the air became heavy, every breath bringing the creeping weight of carbon dioxide poisoning. A desperate question hung in the air. Could Stover and Link escape? A free dive to the surface, 360 feet, 110 meters above, was considered. A harrowing swim through crushing pressure and icy darkness. But the risks were staggering. At such depths, even the most seasoned diver would face almost certain death. The decision was made to stay put, clinging to the hope that rescuers would arrive in time. Minutes turned into hours, and the submersible remained ensnared. In the insulated pilot's compartment, 2 other crew members fought to stay calm, insulated from the cold but helpless to save their companions. For Stover and Link, trapped in the freezing aluminum section, the darkness became suffocating. The cold seeped into their bones, and the toxic air tightened its grip. By the time rescue teams finally reached the Johnson Sea Link, a full 24 hours later, it was too late. Stover and Link had succumbed to carbon dioxide poisoning, their final moments spent in the silent, crushing isolation of the deep. The survivors in the pilot's compartment were pulled to safety, but the loss of Stover and Link left an indelible mark. The ocean, vast and indifferent, had claimed 2 more lives. The Johnson Sea Link was eventually freed and repaired, but the haunting events of that day remain a chilling reminder of the risks that come with venturing into the abyss. Even now, the story of the Johnson Sea Link lingers like a ghostly whisper in the annals of deep-sea exploration, a stark warning about the unforgiving nature of the deep. What begins as a pursuit of discovery can so easily turn into a struggle for survival. Beneath the waves, where light and warmth fade into eternal night, the line between life and death is perilously thin. In the vast, icy expanse of the Arctic, where the midnight sun casts an eerie glow over endless fields of snow, a group of British teenagers embarked on what was meant to be a life-changing adventure. They came seeking breathtaking landscapes, camaraderie, and perhaps a fleeting glimpse of a polar bear in its wild, untamed home. But in the summer of 2011, that dream turned into a nightmare, leaving a trail of terror and heartbreak frozen in the tundra forever. 17-year-old Horatio Chappell was one of 80 students who joined the month-long expedition to Svalbard, Norway, organized by the British Schools Exploring Society, BSES. An aspiring doctor with a bright future, Horatio was excited to study climate change firsthand and experience the raw beauty of the Arctic wilderness. For the teens, this was more than just a trip. It was a chance to test themselves against one of the harshest environments on Earth. In a land where polar bears roam as apex predators, the risks were well known. Parents were reassured that the campsites would be safeguarded by tripwires connected to small explosive mines to ward off the bears, while group leaders would carry firearms for additional protection. Pen flares, standard tools for scaring off predators, were also promised to each participant. But as the expedition ventured deeper into the wilderness, cracks in the safety precautions began to show. There weren't enough pen flares to go around. Some of the tripwires didn't function properly, and the firearm assigned to Horatio's group leader was an old, unreliable rifle handled by someone with limited training. On an otherwise calm and quiet Arctic night, as the teenagers lay asleep in their tents, disaster struck. A starving polar bear, its survival instincts sharpened by desperation, crept into the camp unnoticed. The vast, silent wilderness offered no warning of the predator's approach until it was too late. The bear tore through the stillness, ripping into Horatio's tent with ferocious force. Chaos erupted as screams shattered the night. One of Horatio's companions was bitten on the head as the bear attacked, but the worst was yet to come. The bear dragged Horatio from his tent, its powerful jaws and claws leaving no chance for escape. Despite the desperate attempts of the group's leaders to fend off the beast, they struggled with the malfunctioning rifle, unable to deliver a timely shot. Horatio's life was taken in those horrifying moments, his dreams of healing others extinguished in an act of primal violence. The carnage did not end there. 4 others in the group, including 2 adult leaders, were seriously injured as they fought to stop the bear. Finally, after what must have felt like an eternity, the animal was shot and killed. But the damage was done, both to the group's physical safety and their psyche. What had begun as a journey of discovery became a harrowing tale of survival, forever altering the lives of those who lived through it. In the aftermath, the story shook the whole world. Investigations into the tragedy revealed a cascade of failures: the insufficient safety measures, the faulty tripwires, the inadequate weaponry. The tragedy prompted questions about how such an expedition could have been so poorly equipped in a land where danger was always a heartbeat away. For the families of the victims, no explanation could ease the loss. Horatio's parents mourned the bright young man who had been full of hope and promise, his life cruelly cut short in a remote, unforgiving wilderness. Survivors carried the scars, both visible and invisible, of that night, haunted by memories of the predator's growls, the chaos, and the friends they couldn't save. Even now, the Arctic carries the weight of that terrible night. For some, it's a painful display of nature's indifference, a place where the line between beauty and brutality is perilously thin. For others, it stands as a stark warning. In the wild, where humans are but visitors, complacency can turn awe into tragedy in the blink of an eye. In the shadow of Switzerland's mighty Eiger, the summer of 1936 witnessed a harrowing tale of ambition, resilience, and ultimate tragedy. 4 climbers, Tony Kurtz, Andreas Hinterstoisser, Willi Angerer, and Eddie Rayner, set out to conquer the Eiger's infamous north face, a sheer and deadly wall of rock and ice known as the Mordwand, or Murder Wall. Their mission began with promise, but ended in one of mountaineering's most chilling stories of loss. The team, comprised of seasoned climbers from Germany and Austria, made steady progress as they pushed toward the summit. Their movements were precise, their spirits high, and the weather, often treacherous in the Alps, seemed to be holding. But as they climbed higher, fate began to conspire against them. Near the towering heights, falling rocks struck Angerer, inflicting a severe head injury. The group had no choice but to abandon their ascent and begin the perilous task of down-climbing the unforgiving north face. When they reached a section of the climb that would later bear Hinterstoisser's name, they were met with a cruel twist of irony. The Hinterstoisser traverse, which they had crossed using a daring rope maneuver during the ascent, was now impassable. Forced to find an alternative route, the team began abseiling further down the wall, each movement bringing them closer to safety, but also closer to disaster. On July 21st, their luck ran out. An avalanche roared down the face, a thunderous cascade of ice and snow that changed everything in an instant. Hinterstoisser was swept away, his body vanishing into the void below. Angerer, still weakened from his earlier injury, was slammed into the rock wall with devastating force, killing him on impact. Rayner, who had been belaying the group, was dragged into the wall by the tension on the ropes. Though he survived the initial impact, the crushing weight suffocated him within minutes. Amid the chaos and destruction, only Tony Kurtz remained alive, dangling above the abyss in the grip of a relentless blizzard. He was alone now, suspended between life and death on the frozen north face of the Eiger. That night, as the storm howled and temperatures plunged, a rescue team arrived, but the darkness and the treacherous conditions made it impossible to reach him. Kurtz endured the long, frigid hours, his will to survive carrying him through the unimaginable cold. Morning brought the rescuers back, determined to bring him down alive. Hope flickered as Kurtz worked tirelessly, knotting their rescue rope to his own and preparing to descend. For a moment, it seemed salvation was within reach. Kurtz began abseiling toward the rescuers, inching closer to safety with every painstaking move. But then he encountered an unyielding obstacle, a knot where the 2 ropes joined, preventing his descent any further. Trapped just out of reach, Kurtz struggled to manipulate his gear, his frostbitten hands betraying him as precious time slipped away. The rescuers watched helplessly from below as Kurtz's strength ebbed. Finally, he looked down at them, his voice carrying across the icy expanse as he uttered the words, "Ich kann nicht mehr," I can't go on anymore. Moments later, his body went still, claimed by the cold and exhaustion. The tragedy on the Eiger's north face became a legend, a haunting tale of courage, perseverance, and the brutal indifference of nature. For those who knew the climbers, it was a devastating loss. For the mountaineering world, it was a stark reminder of the deadly risks that come with challenging the limits of human endurance. Even now, the story of Tony Kurtz and his team echoes through the annals of climbing history, a chilling testament to both the allure and the peril of the high alpine world.